The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was never quiet. For 10,000 years, representatives from 47 space-faring species had gathered in this massive orbital station to argue, negotiate, and shape the future of the known galaxy. The chamber was built to hold thousands, and its curved walls displayed holographic maps of star systems that stretched across millions of light years. But today the chamber was silent. High Chancellor Merritt stood at the central podium, her forearms gripping the edges of the platform. She was a Valoran, her blue skin now pale with a fear she could not hide. Around her, delegates from dozens of species sat frozen in their seats. Some had stopped breathing, others trembled openly. On the massive display screen behind her, a fleet of ships moved through space. They had emerged from a region of the galaxy that every species had learned to avoid, a region with no stars on any map, a region simply called the Silence. How many ships? Whispered Ambassador Voreth of the Kelari Dominion. He was a military leader, 7 tall, with gray armored skin and eyes that had seen 100 battles, but his voice shook like a frightened child. The censor officer, a small Rethari with 6 eyes, checked the readings again and again. His claws clicked nervously against his console. 47 vessels in the first wave, he reported, but there are more behind them, many more. Our deep sensors cannot count them all. A sound moved through the chamber. It was not quite a gasp, not quite a cry. It was the sound of ancient fear waking up after 12,000 years of sleep. Impossible, said Elder Catherine, the council's chief historian. He was old even by the standards of his long-lived species. His memory stretched back 300 years, and his knowledge stretched back much further. The silence has been empty for millennia. Nothing lives there. Nothing can live there. These ships are not from the silence, said Boreth. He pulled up a secondary display showing the vessel designs in detail. Look at the construction, the metal composition, the engine signatures. Kron leaned forward, his ancient eyes studied the data, and then those eyes went wide with a terror that his 300 years of life had never prepared him for. No, he whispered, it cannot be. What? Demanded High Chancellor Miraset. What do you see? Kran turned to face the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of forgotten history. These are human vessels. The word moved through the grand chamber like a disease. Delegates who had never shown fear in their lives pressed back in their seats. Several smaller species simply fled, abandoning their posts and running for the exits. One ambassador from the Torelli collective fainted and had to be carried away. Humans are a myth, said Murray, but her voice held no conviction. Stories told to frighten children. They are not real. They are real, said Catherine. He moved to a secure terminal and began entering codes that had not been used in thousands of years, and they are the reason the silence exists. A new display appeared in the chamber. It showed files marked with the highest security classification. The council possessed files that only 3 living beings had access to, files that spoke of events from before the Galactic Council existed. 12,000 years ago, Catherine began. Progenitors ruled this galaxy. They were the most advanced species ever known. They conquered everything they touched. They believed they were destined to own the universe itself. The delegates listened. Many had heard legends of the progenitors, but few knew the truth. The progenitors discovered a small planet at the edge of the galaxy, a primitive world with primitive creatures. These creatures had just learned to work with metal. They built simple cities and fought simple wars. The progenitors decided to claim them as slaves. Catherine paused. His hands trembled as he continued. They sent a conquest fleet, 100 warships, to enslave a planet that had not yet invented the wheel. It should have taken days. What happened? Asked Murray. We do not know, said Cathan. The fleet never returned. Progenitors sent a second fleet, then a third, then a fourth. None of them came back. No messages, no distress signals. Nothing. The chamber was absolutely still. The progenitors gathered their entire military force, 10,000 of the most powerful warships ever built. They traveled to this small planet to destroy it completely, to burn it from existence. Catherine's voice dropped to barely a whisper. That was the last anyone ever heard from the progenitors. Their entire civilization vanished. Their worlds went dark. Their colonies fell silent. Within one generation, a species that had ruled the galaxy for a million years simply ceased to exist. In the region of space where they had lived became what we now call the Silence. Ambassador Vorath stood slowly. His military mind was processing the implications. You are telling us, he said carefully, that these humans destroyed the progenitors, that they wiped out the most powerful civilization in galactic history while they were still using bronze weapons. I am telling you what the records show, said Catherine, and the records show more. The progenitors were not the only ones. Over the following millennia, 12 other species discovered the human home world. 12 other species attempted to conquer it or destroy it. All 12 of those species are now extinct. This is madness, said a delegate from the Fenari Republic. No primitive species could defeat such enemies. They are no longer primitive, said the censor officer. His voice was hollow with shock. Chancellor, I am reading the energy signatures from those vessels. Each one of those ships carries enough firepower to destroy a planet. And based on the readings from the Silence, there are not 47 ships. There are thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands. The Grand Chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screamed at each other. Military commanders called for immediate action. Some demanded that every jump gate be closed and every planetary shield activated. Others called for a preemptive strike before the humans could attack. High Chancellor Murray raised all 4 of her arms, demanding silence. Slowly, reluctantly, the chamber quieted. What are they doing? She asked the censor officer. Are they approaching? Are they charging weapons? The officer checked his readings several times before answering. No, Chancellor, they have stopped. They are holding position at the edge of Council space. They have made no aggressive moves. Then what are they waiting for? Before anyone could answer, a new alert flashed across the main display. The communications officer, a young Valoran with shaking hands, looked up at the Chancellor. We are receiving a transmission, she said, from the human fleet. The chamber went silent. Again, every eye turned to the main display. Every heart in the room beat faster. Show it, said Murray. Display flickered, and then a face appeared. It was a human face. 2 eyes, 1 mouth, pale skin stretched over unfamiliar bones. The creature's expression was calm, peaceful even. It showed no anger, no threat, no hunger for conquest. The human spoke. Its voice was soft and clear, translated instantly. By the council systems, greetings to the Galactic Council. My name is Elena Vasquez, and I am the appointed ambassador of the Human Confederation. We have watched your civilization grow. For many centuries, we have seen your achievements and your struggles. We have debated among ourselves for a very long time whether to make contact. The human paused around the chamber. Delegates held their breath. We come in peace. We carry no hostile intentions. We ask only for permission to speak with your council, to share knowledge, and perhaps to build a friendship between our peoples. We understand that our history may cause concern. We are prepared to answer any questions you have. The message ended. The display returned to the image of the waiting fleet. For a long moment no one moved, no one spoke. The most feared species in galactic legend had just asked for permission to talk. Hi. Chancellor Murray looked around the chamber. She saw terror in every face. She saw delegates ready to flee, ready to fight, ready to do anything except face what stood before them. But she also saw something else, a small chance, a tiny hope. Respond to their message. She said slowly, tell them one vessel may approach. One vessel unarmed may dock at the council station. Their ambassador may address the council. Chancellor Vorath stepped forward. This could be a trap, a trick. We should strike now while we have the chance. Strike them with what? Asked Murray. Quietly, you heard the reports. They have the power to destroy us all, and they are asking for permission to speak. If they wanted us dead, we would already be dead. She turned back to the display, watching the motionless fleet. Perhaps it is a trap. Perhaps we are all going to die. But if there is any chance at all that they truly come in peace, then we must take it. Alternative is a war we cannot win. The communications officer sent the response. The chamber waited, and across the void of space, the human fleet received its answer. A single shuttle detached from the lead vessel and began its approach. The galaxy had never been more afraid, and it had never been more curious. What did the humans want? Why had they finally emerged from the silence, and what truth lay behind 12,000 years of legend and terror? The answers were coming, whether the council was ready for them or not. The shuttle descended through the docking bay in perfect silence. It was a small craft, simple in design, with smooth curves and no visible weapons. Security teams surrounded the landing pad with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Scanners swept the vessel 1,000 times, searching for hidden threats, secret weapons, or any sign of danger. They found nothing. The shuttle was exactly what it appeared to be, a simple transport carrying a single passenger. High Chancellor Merritt stood at the front of the welcoming delegation, though welcoming was perhaps the wrong word. Behind her, Ambassador Vorath commanded a squad of Kilthari warriors in full battle armor. Their weapons were charged and ready. Their orders were clear. At the first sign of hostility, they would open fire with everything they had. No one expected it would make any difference. The shuttle door opened. A ramp extended to the floor, and then she appeared. Elena Vasquez was smaller than anyone had expected. She stood perhaps 5'12" ft. tall, with dark hair tied back from a face that showed no tension, no fear, and no threat. She wore simple clothing, a white shirt and dark pants. Nothing More, no armor, no weapons, no protective equipment of any kind. She was alone. She walked down the ramp with easy, unhurried steps. When she reached the bottom, she stopped and looked around at the dozens of armed guards, pointing weapons at her chest. Her expression did not change. If anything, she looked slightly amused. "Thank you for receiving me," she said. Her voice was calm and warm, like someone greeting old friends. "I understand this must be difficult for you. I want you to know that I appreciate your courage." Hi. Chancellor Miraset stepped forward. Up close, the human seemed even less threatening. She was soft, fragile looking, with no claws or armor or natural weapons. She looked like prey, not predator, but Merritt knew better. She had seen the records. She knew what this small, soft creature represented. "Ambassador Vasquez," she said, keeping her voice steady through sheer willpower, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you. Please understand that the security measures are necessary." "Of course," said Alina. She smiled, and the smile seemed genuine. "You are afraid. That is natural. Everything you know about my species tells you to be afraid. I hope I can change that." She looked past Murray to the warriors behind her. Voreth stood among them, his gray face hard as stone, his hand resting on his weapon. "You are military," Alina said to him. "I can see it in how you stand, how you watch me. You have fought many battles." "I have," said Barath. His voice was cold. "Then you know something that many others do not," said Alina. "You know that true strength is not about destruction. It is about choice. The strongest warrior is not the one who kills every enemy. It is the one who can kill but chooses not to." Voreth said nothing, but something flickered in his eyes, a question he was not ready to ask. Murray guided Alina through the station's corridors toward the diplomatic chambers. Everywhere they went, people stopped and stared. Some ran, some froze in terror. A few bowed, as if Alelina were some kind of god. Alelina noticed everything but commented on nothing. She simply walked, patient and calm, as if she had all the time in the universe. The diplomatic chambers were a secure section of the station designed for sensitive negotiations. The room where Alina was brought swept for threats 7 times. Guards stood at every entrance. Recording devices captured every word, every movement, every breath. Elder Catherine was waiting inside, surrounded by data displays and ancient files. When Alina entered, he stood slowly. His old body trembled, but his eyes were sharp and searching. "Ambassador Vasquez," he said, "I am Catherine, chief historian of the Galactic Council. I have spent my life studying the past, but I have never been more uncertain about history than I am right now." Alina walked to the displays and looked at the data, files upon files, thousands of years of records, all focused on a single subject: humanity. "You call these the human files?" she said. It was not a question. "Yes," said Cethine. "They contain everything we know about your species, every encounter, every observation, every legend." "May I see them?" Cethine hesitated. These were the most classified documents in Council history, but what choice did he have? He stepped aside and allowed Alina access. She read in silence. Her eyes moved across the displays, taking in thousands of years of fear and speculation. Her expression shifted slowly from curiosity to sadness, to something that might have been grief. "You believe we destroyed the progenitors," she said finally. "Did You not, we defeated them, said Alina. Carefully, we stopped their conquest. But destroyed, no, that is not what happened. Catherine leaned forward. Then explain, please. The progenitors vanished, their entire civilization disappeared. If you did not destroy them, what did you do? Elena turned away from the displays. She looked at Catherine with eyes that held weight beyond her apparent years. The progenitors came to our world 12,000 years ago, you know. This, they wanted slaves. They infected our planet with a biological weapon designed to make us obedient, docile, easy to control. Catherine nodded. This match the records. What you do not know, Alina continued, is that their weapon failed. Human biology is adaptable in ways that other species are not. Within 3 generations we had developed complete immunity. More than that, we had learned from their technology. We studied the ships they left behind. We reverse-engineered their systems. By the time they returned for their slaves, we were ready to fight, ready to choose. Elena's voice was firm. When the progenitors came back, we gave them a choice. They could leave in peace and never return, or they could fight and face the consequences. They chose to fight, and you destroyed them. No, Elena shook her head. We defeated them. Every ship they sent, we captured or disabled. Every warrior they deployed, we neutralized without killing. And when their entire fleet was helpless before us, we gave them another choice. She paused, letting the words settle. We offered them rehabilitation, a chance to change, a chance to become something better than conquerors and slavers. Catherine stared at her. That is impossible. The progenitors were the most aggressive species in galactic history. They lived for conquest. They did, Alina agreed. But aggression is not permanent. It can be unlearned. It took time, thousands of years. But the progenitors changed. They grew. They learned to build instead of destroy, to cooperate instead of conquer. You are saying they are still alive. I am saying they asked us to come here. They wanted us to make contact with the galaxy, to offer others what we offered them. Catherine sat down heavily. His mind struggled to process what he was hearing. For 12,000 years the galaxy had believed the progenitors were extinct. For 12,000 years they had feared humans as destroyers, as weapons of extinction. And now this small, soft creature was telling him that everything they believed was wrong. The other species, he said, the 12 civilizations that attacked Earth after the progenitors. Our records say you destroyed them as well. Elena smiled. Sadly, your records are incomplete. Those species attacked us. Yes, some of them did terrible things, but we did not destroy them. We absorbed them. Absorbed, they live among us now. They are part of our society. Their descendants walk freely on human worlds, attend human schools, serve in human government. They are human in every way that matters. She gestured to the displays showing the human files. You built these records on fear and fragments. You filled the gaps with nightmares, but the truth is simpler and stranger than anything you imagine. Elena turned to face Catherine directly. Her eyes were warm but serious. The silence is not empty. It is a sanctuary. For 12,000 years humanity has been doing the same thing we did. With the progenitors, we find species that cannot live peacefully with others. We give them a choice, change or face isolation. Those who choose to change We help those who refuse, we contain. How many? Catherine whispered. How many? Species live in the silence, 43 said. Elena, 43 civilizations that once threatened the galaxy, 43 peoples who have learned a different way, and now they are ready. We are all ready. She walked to the door and looked back at the old historian. I will address your council tomorrow. I will tell them the truth about humanity. I will show them what we have built in the silence, and I will bring proof that even the most feared enemies can become the closest friends. What proof? Asked Catherine. Elena smiled. I will bring a progenitor. She left the chamber, leaving Catherine alone with his shattered understanding of history. For a long time, he simply sat there staring at the files that had defined his life's work. Everything he knew was wrong, and tomorrow the entire galaxy would learn the truth. The question was whether they would be able to accept it. In her quarters that night, Elena Vasquez looked out at the stars. Somewhere in the darkness, the human fleet waited. Somewhere beyond, the silence held its secrets, and somewhere in the station, 47 species prepared to hear a story that would change everything they believed. She hoped they were ready, but she knew that some truths were harder to accept than any weapon was hard to defeat. Tomorrow would be the real test. Not a test of strength or technology or military power, a test of something much more difficult, a test of trust. The Grand Chamber had never been so full. Every seat was taken, every species was represented. Delegates who had not attended council sessions in decades had traveled across the galaxy for this moment. The observation galleries were packed with journalists, historians, and curious citizens from 100 worlds. They had all come to see the human. High Chancellor Mira Set stood at the central podium looking out at the sea of faces. She saw fear in most of them. She saw anger in some, but she also saw something else, a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, the nightmare they had feared for so long was not as terrible as they believed. Delegates of the Galactic Council, she announced, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. We have gathered today to hear testimony from Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Human Confederation. This is a historic moment. Whatever we learn today will shape the future of our galaxy. She turned toward the main entrance. The massive door stood closed, guarded by warriors from a dozen species. Ambassador Vasquez has requested permission to address this body. I have granted that request. She has promised to answer our questions and share knowledge that has been hidden for 12,000 years. Mira Set paused, looking around the chamber one last time. I ask all delegates to listen with open minds. The truth may be difficult to hear, but truth, however difficult, is always better than ignorance. She nodded to the guards. The doors opened. Elena Vasquez walked into the grand chamber with the same calm confidence she had shown since her arrival. She was still alone, still unarmed, still impossibly small against the vastness of the room and the thousands of eyes watching her. Every step, she climbed the stairs to the speaker's platform and looked out at the gathered delegates. For a long moment she said nothing. She simply waited, allowing the tension to build, allowing everyone to see that she was not afraid. Then she spoke. Thank you for hearing me, she began. I know this is not easy. I know that everything you have learned about my species tells you to be afraid. I know that many of you expect me to threaten you, to demand surrender, to behave like the monster From your nightmares, she shook her head slowly. I am not here to threaten anyone. I am here to tell you the truth. And the truth is more complicated than any legend could capture. She raised her hand, and a holographic display appeared behind her. It showed Earth, a blue and green sphere spinning slowly. The darkness of space, 12,000 years ago. My ancestors lived on this world. They had just learned to work with bronze. They built simple cities and fought simple wars. They looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone in the universe. The display shifted, showing a fleet of alien warships descending through Earth's atmosphere. Then the progenitors came. Your records tell you that they came to conquer. That much is true. They saw my ancestors as primitive creatures, useful only as slaves. They brought weapons and diseases and chains. Alina's voice remained steady, but something harder entered her eyes. What your records do not tell you is how my ancestors responded. They did not surrender. They did not despair. They watched. They learned. They adapted. Display showed human figures studying captured progenitor technology, working in secret building and hidden places. The progenitors infected our world with a biological weapon designed to make us compliant. They expected to return in a few generations and find a planet full of obedient slaves. Instead, they found something else entirely. The display shifted again, showing the progenitor fleet returning to Earth and being surrounded by human vessels. We had developed immunity to their weapon. We had reverse engineered their technology. We had built ships of our own, and when they came to claim their slaves, we gave them a choice that they had never expected. Alina paused, letting her words echo through the chamber. We offered them peace. A murmur ran through the delegates. This was not what they had expected to hear. The progenitors did not accept our offer. They could not imagine that prey could become predator, that slaves could become equals. They attacked with everything they had. The display showed battle, human vessels intercepting progenitor warships, capturing rather than destroying, disabling rather than killing. We won, but we did not do what they would have done. We did not slaughter them. We did not burn their worlds. We did not take revenge for the suffering they had caused. Elelina looked directly into the eyes of the nearest delegates. We contained them. We isolated them in a protected region of space, and then we began the slow, patient work of teaching them to be better. Impossible, called out a voice from the Kalari section. Ambassador Vorath stood, his gray face tight with disbelief. The progenitors were conquerors by nature. They lived for war and domination. You cannot teach such a species to be peaceful. You are wrong, said Alina calmly. Aggression is not destiny. Violence is not permanent. Every species, no matter how warlike, has the capacity for change. It simply requires patience, time, and belief that change is possible. She gestured, and the display shifted to show something new. Thriving civilization in the heart of the silence, cities gleaming with light, ships traveling between worlds, beings of many shapes working together in harmony. The progenitors changed. It took 3,000 years, 3,000 years of isolation, education, and gradual transformation, but they changed. The species that once sought to enslave the galaxy now builds hospitals and schools. The warriors who burned worlds now plant gardens and raise children. The chamber had gone completely silent. Delegates stared at the display with wide eyes and open mouths, and they are not alone. Elena continued over the following millennia. Other aggressive species found Earth. Other empires sent there fleets to conquer or destroy us, and every time we gave them the same choice. We gave the progenitors every time we offered them a chance to change. The display showed more images, dozens of different species living together, working together, building together. 43 civilizations now live in the silence. 43 peoples who once threatened the peace of the galaxy. 43 former enemies who have become partners and friends. Elder C then rose slowly from his seat. His voice was thin but carried across. The silent chamber you claim to have performed miracles you claim to have transformed the most violent species in history into peaceful neighbors, but claims are not proof. How can we believe any of this? Elena smiled. I expected that question, and I have an answer. She turned toward the main entrance. The great doors had remained open since she entered. I told you that the progenitors asked us to make contact with the galaxy. What I did not tell you is that they asked to come with us. They wanted to speak to you themselves, to apologize for what their ancestors did, to show you what they have become. She raised her voice. With the council's permission, I would like to introduce a second guest, a representative of the progenitor people, the first of his kind to enter council space in 12,000 years. Murray stood frozen at her podium. Around the chamber, delegates gripped their seats. With white knuckles, guards raised their weapons, uncertain where to point them. Chancellor, said Elena gently, I promise you there is no danger. He comes in peace, just as I do. He comes to build bridges, not to burn them. Miraset looked at Elena for a long moment, then she nodded once. Permission granted. Figure appeared in the doorway. The progenitor was tall, nearly 8 ft, with deep blue skin covered in intricate patterns that seemed to glow faintly in the chamber's light. His eyes were large and dark, filled with an intelligence that was clearly ancient and deep. He wore simple robes of white and silver. With no weapons or armor, he walked into the grand chamber with slow, dignified steps. As he passed each section of delegates, beings who had heard legends of progenitor cruelty for thousands of years shrank back in their seats. Some cried out in fear, some reached for weapons they did not have. Progenitor ignored all of it. He climbed the stairs to stand beside Elena on the speaker's platform, and then slowly and deliberately he lowered himself to his knees. He bowed his head until it touched the floor. I am called Vas, he said. His voice was deep and resonant, carrying easily across the vast chamber. I am an elder of the progenitor people, and I come before you today to offer something that is long overdue. He lifted his head but remained on his knees. I come to apologize, not for myself. I was born thousands of years after my ancestors committed their crimes, but I apologize on behalf of my people for the suffering we caused, for the worlds we burned, for the lives we destroyed, and our arrogance and greed. Tears appeared in his dark eyes. We were wrong. We were cruel and foolish and blind. We believe that strength meant domination, that power meant control, that the universe existed for us to conquer. He looked up at Elena, who stood beside him with quiet dignity. The humans showed us a different way. They defeated us without destroying us. They punished us without revenge, and then they spent 3,000 years teaching us to be better, teaching us that true strength is not about what you can destroy, it is about what you can build. Elder Voss rose slowly to his feet. He looked out at the thousands of delegates who stared at him with fear and wonder. I know you have no reason to trust me. I know that the crimes of my ancestors cannot be erased by words, but I ask you to consider something. He gestured toward Alina. The humans had every reason to destroy us. We came to enslave them. We infected them with disease. We tried to erase their freedom and their future. And when they defeated us, they had the power to end our species forever. His voice dropped to barely a whisper, but it carried across the silent chamber. They chose mercy instead, and that mercy transformed us. It gave us a chance to become what we never dreamed we could be. He placed one hand over his heart. I stand before you today not as a conqueror, but as proof that change is possible, that even the worst enemies can become the best of friends, and that the humans are not the monsters of your nightmares. He looked at Alina with something that might have been love. They are the best of us, and they want to help you become the best of yourselves. The grand chamber remained silent. Thousands of beings sat frozen, their minds struggling to process what they had witnessed. The most feared species in galactic history had not come to destroy them. They had come offering friendship and hope, and they had brought proof that even legends could be wrong. On the speaker's platform, Alina Vasquez and Elder Voss stood together. Human and progenitor, former enemies now united in a common purpose. The truth had been spoken. Now the galaxy had to decide what to do with it. The silence in the grand chamber lasted for exactly 12 seconds, then chaos erupted. Delegates screamed at each other across the vast space. Military officers called for armed response. Some species demanded immediate alliance with the humans, others called for total war. A group of Fennery diplomats tried to flee through the emergency exits, only to find them blocked by security forces. High Chancellor Murray stood at her podium, shouting for order, but her voice was lost in the storm of fear and confusion. For the first time in her long career, she had completely lost control of the council. On the speaker's platform, Alina Vasquez and Elder Voss remained calm. They watched the chaos without reaction, waiting patiently for the storm to pass. Alina had expected this. She had seen similar reactions before. The overwhelming flood of emotion when beings confronted truths they had spent generations avoiding. Eventually, after nearly an hour of shouting and confusion, the chamber began to quiet. Delegates collapsed into their seats, exhausted by their own fear. Miras had finally regained control of the speaking systems and demanded silence. We will have order, she declared, her voice sharp with authority. We will conduct ourselves as civilized beings, or I will clear this chamber and continue without you. The threat worked. The remaining noise faded to tense whispers. Ambassador Voreth of the Cathari Dominion rose from his seat. His gray face was tight with barely controlled emotion. Of all the species in the chamber, the Kalari had the most reason to fear what they had witnessed. They were the galaxy's current military power. They had built their entire civilization on strength and conquest, and now they had learned that they were nothing compared to the humans. Ambassador Vasquez, Voreth said, his voice carefully controlled, your words and your guest have given us much to consider, but Words and gestures are not proof. You claim to have reformed the progenitors. You claim to have built a sanctuary for aggressive species, but we have only your claims. He paused, letting his challenge settle over the chamber. If you truly wish us to trust you, we need more than speeches. We need evidence. We need to know the true strength of your forces. We need to understand exactly what we are dealing with. Elena nodded slowly. That is a fair request. What would you like to know? How many ships do you have? The chamber went still again. This was the question everyone wanted answered, and everyone dreaded hearing. Elena considered for a moment. Then she turned to the main display and entered a command. The holographic image shifted, showing a tactical map of the silence. The human Confederation maintains a standing fleet of approximately 400,000 warships, she said simply. The number landed like a bomb. Delegates who had been sitting upright slumped in their seats. Voreth, who commanded the largest military in the council, went pale beneath his gray skin. The entire Kilthari fleet numbered fewer than 30,000 vessels. 400,000. Someone whispered, that could conquer the entire galaxy. It could, Elena agreed. In theory, our forces could reach every inhabited system within 6 months. We have mapped your defenses. We know your weaknesses. If conquest were our goal, you would have no chance of stopping us. She let the words hang in the air for a moment. But conquest has never been our goal. Our fleet exists for one purpose: to patrol the silence and maintain peace among the species who live there. We have never used it for aggressive expansion. We never will. Elder Voss stepped forward. I can confirm this. I have lived among the humans for 3 centuries. In all that time, I have never seen them use their military power for anything except defense and peacekeeping. They have the strength to rule the galaxy, but they choose not to. Convenient word, said Boreth. Easy promises, but how can we trust them? You cannot, said Elena directly. Not yet. Trust must be earned, and we have done nothing to earn yours. All I can offer is our actions. Judge us by what we do, not by what we say. She stepped closer to the edge of the platform, looking directly at Voreth. I understand your fear, Ambassador. You have built your civilization on military strength. You look at us and see a threat to everything you have achieved. You wonder if we will try to dominate you, to reduce your people to nothing. Voreth said nothing, but his eyes confirmed everything she had said. Let me tell you something that might help. Elena continued. We do not want to rule anyone. We do not want servants or subjects or slaves. We want partners, equals, friends. She gestured toward Elder Voss. The progenitors tried to enslave us. Now they are our closest allies. The species who attacked us became the species who work alongside us. Every enemy we have ever faced has had the chance to become something better. She extended her hand toward Voreth in a gesture of friendship. We offer you the same chance, not domination, partnership, not conquest, cooperation. The galaxy is vast, and the challenges ahead are greater than any single species can face alone. For a moment, something changed in Bora's eyes. A crack appeared in his wall of fear and suspicion. He almost reached out to take her hand. Then a voice called out from the Kilthari military section. Admiral Voreth, we cannot accept this. They are lying. They must be lying. The speaker was a younger Kilari officer, his face twisted with terror and rage, before anyone could react, he pulled a weapon from beneath his formal robes, a compact missile launcher small enough to conceal but powerful enough to destroy an armored vehicle. He aimed it directly at Alina's chest and fired. The missile crossed the chamber in less than a second. There was no time to react, no time to dodge, no time to do anything except die. But Alina did not die. A small drone appeared from nowhere, a sphere no larger than a human fist, and intercepted the missile barely 3 ft from Alina's body. There was a flash of energy, contained explosion, and then nothing. The missile was gone. The drone hovered for a moment, then disappeared again. The chamber exploded into screams and confusion. Guards rushed toward the artillery section. The young officer who had fired was tackled by his own people and pinned to the ground. Ambassador Vorath stood frozen, his face showing horror at what one of his own had done. Through it all, Alina had not moved. She stood exactly where she had been, her expression unchanged, her hands still clear, throat at her sides. Not a single hair was out of place. That was unnecessary, she said quietly. Chamber slowly fell silent again. Every eye was fixed on the human ambassador, who had just survived an assassination attempt without even flinching. We knew this might happen, Alina continued. Fear makes people do terrible things. We brought defensive systems to protect ourselves, not because we expected betrayal, but because we understand fear. She looked at the young officer who was still being held on the ground by artillery guards. I do not blame him. He was afraid. His entire world had been turned upside down in a single day. He struck out at what frightened him. It is a natural response. She turned to Ambassador Vorath, who looked like he might be sick. I do not blame you either, Ambassador. You did not order this attack. You did not want it. I saw your face in the moment before the missile fired. You were considering my offer. You were close to accepting. Vorath's voice was barely a whisper. How can you not blame us? One of our own tried to kill you. We have committed an act of war against a force that could destroy us in months. Because blame serves no purpose, said Alina. Because anger leads only to more anger, and violence leads only to more violence. Because the cycle of fear and hatred has broken every civilization that embraced it. She stepped down from the platform and walked toward the artillery section. Guards moved to stop her, but she waved them aside. She walked directly to where the young officer lay on the ground and knelt beside him. What is your name? She asked gently. The officer looked up at her with wild, terrified eyes. Korath, he managed. Subcommander Korath. Korath, Alina repeated. You tried to kill me because you were afraid. You thought that by destroying me, you could protect your people from the threat we represent. He nodded weakly. I understand, said Alina. I truly do. Fear is the oldest enemy. It whispers to us that we must destroy what we do not understand. It tells us that the only way to be safe is to strike first. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. But fear is a liar, Korath. The humans do not want to hurt your people. We never did. And this act, this moment of terror will not change that. She stood and addressed the entire chamber. There will be no retaliation for this attack. There will be no punishment for the Kilthari people. We expected fear. We were prepared for fear, and we will not let fear destroy the possibility of something better. High Chancellor Murray stepped forward. her voice shaking. Ambassador Vasquez, the council owes you an apology. This should never have happened. No apology is necessary, said Alina, but I appreciate the sentiment. She looked around the chamber at the thousands of delegates who stared at her with new expressions that held less fear and more wonder. You asked me what we want from you. Let me answer that question now, clearly and completely. She returned to the speaker's platform and stood beside Elder Voss once more. We want partnership, we want cooperation, we want to help you build a galaxy where no species needs to fear extinction, where disagreements are resolved through negotiation rather than war, where even the most aggressive peoples have a chance to change and grow. She pointed toward the stars, visible through the chamber's great windows. There are threats coming, dangers that you do not yet know about. The Valori swarm is expanding from the galactic rim. In 200 years they will reach council space. Your current forces cannot stop them. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Vori were a legend, nightmare from the outer darkness that consumed everything in their path. But together, Alina continued, we can face them. Together we can build defenses. Together we can offer the Valori what we offered the progenitors, a choice to change or face the consequences. She extended her hands toward the gathered delegates. We are not asking you to surrender. We are not asking you to submit. We are asking you to grow, to become something greater than you are, to join us in building a galaxy. Strength means protection, not domination, where power means responsibility, not privilege. Elder Voss stepped forward beside her. I once commanded fleets that burned worlds, he said. I once believed that the universe belonged to the strong. The humans showed me I was wrong. They showed me a different kind of strength, the strength to choose mercy when vengeance would be easier. He looked at the young officer who had tried to kill Alina, now being helped to his feet by his fellow Cathari. That strength transformed my people. It can transform yours if you let it. The grand chamber was silent, but it was a different silence than before. The terror was fading. Something else was taking its place, something that might have been hope. High Chancellor Murray looked at Alina Vasquez, this small, soft creature who had survived an assassination attempt with a smile, who had offered forgiveness to the being who tried to murder her, who represented a power that could destroy them all, but asked only for friendship. Ambassador Vasquez, she said slowly, the council will need time to consider your proposal. There is much to discuss. Of course, or said Alina, we have waited 12,000 years. We can wait a little longer. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that held no threat and no demand. We will be here when you are ready. The debates lasted for 17 days. In the grand chamber, delegates argued from dawn until long past midnight. Some demanded immediate alliance with the humans. Others called for rejection of everything they had offered. Military leaders drew up battle plans they knew were hopeless. Diplomats drafted treaties they were not sure they believed in. Through it all, Alina Vasquez waited. She attended sessions, when invited, answered questions with patient honesty, and never showed frustration at the endless circles of discussion. Elder Voss remained by her side, offering testimony about life in the silence whenever anyone would listen. The galaxy watched on. Thousands of worlds, billions of beings followed the debates with desperate attention. News networks broadcast every speech, every argument, every moment of the historic proceedings. Opinion polls shifted hourly as new information emerged. Fear remained strong, but it was changing. The story of the assassination attempt had spread across the galaxy within hours. Everyone had seen the footage, the young Kalari officer firing his weapon, the human drone intercepting the missile, and Elena's calm response, her forgiveness, her mercy. That moment did more to change minds than any speech could have. On the 18th day, High Chancellor Murray called for a final vote. The chamber fell silent as she read the question that would shape the future of the galaxy. The Galactic Council is asked to vote on the following resolution: to accept the offer of partnership from the Human Confederation, to open diplomatic relations and establish joint councils for mutual defense and cooperation, to commit our civilization to the principles outlined by Ambassador Vasquez: peace through strength, mercy toward enemies, and rehabilitation rather than extinction. She looked around the chamber at the thousands of delegates who represented billions of lives. Those in favor signal now. Lights began to appear across the chamber, the voting signals of species large and small, powerful and weak, ancient and young. They flickered on one by one, then in groups, then in floods. When the count was complete, 73% of the council had voted in favor. Mira said aloud herself. A small smile. The resolution passes. The Galactic Council officially welcomes the Human Confederation as partners in building a better galaxy. The chamber erupted in a mixture of cheers and worried murmurs. Some delegates embraced each other with joy. Others sat in stunned silence, still uncertain about what they had agreed to. But the decision was made. After 12,000 years of isolation, humanity had returned to the galaxy, not as conquerors, as friends. Elena Vasquez accepted the vote with quiet dignity. She did not celebrate or boast. She simply thanked the council for their courage and promised that the Human Confederation would honor the trust being placed in them. This is not an ending, she told the assembled delegates. It is a beginning. There is much work ahead of us, much to learn, much to build, but today we have taken the first step towards something that has never existed before, a galaxy united not by fear but by hope. 1 week later, a delegation from the council traveled to the Silence. The ship chosen for the journey was the largest and most advanced vessel in the council's fleet, a diplomatic cruiser carrying representatives from all 47 member species. High Chancellor Murray commanded the mission personally. Ambassador Vorath led the military escort, his gray face still showing the weight of what had happened in the grand chamber. Elelina and Elder Voss traveled with them, serving as guides to a region of space that no council member had ever seen. The journey took 3 days. As they crossed the invisible boundary into the Silence, the delegates gathered at the observation windows, expecting to see empty darkness, dead worlds, the remnants of civilizations destroyed by human wrath. Instead, they saw light. Stars burned bright across the Silence, not the scattered dying stars of abandoned space, but thriving suns surrounded by planets and stations and ships. Traffic lanes crisscross the void, carrying vessels of 100 different designs. Communication signals filled every frequency with the sounds of commerce, art, debate, and song. This Is impossible, whispered Murray. Our sensors showed nothing. Our probes reported empty space. Your sensors saw what we wanted them to see, said Alina. Gently, we have had 12,000 years to perfect our concealment technology. We wanted to be left alone until we were ready. She pointed toward a bright cluster of lights in the distance. That is New Harmony, the capital of the human confederation. It began as a single station housing the first progenitor refugees. Now it is home to over 2 billion beings from 43 different species. The delegation ship continued deeper into the silence. As they traveled, Alina pointed out world after world, explaining the history of each one. That planet was settled by the Varakath, a species that nearly destroyed itself through civil war. We offered them sanctuary and helped them rebuild. They now produce some of the finest engineers in the Confederation. That station is the Academy of Reconciliation, where former soldiers from aggressive species learn new skills. Many become teachers, doctors, builders. They find purpose in creation instead of destruction. That fleet belongs to the reformed progenitor defense force. They patrol our borders and protect the species who live here. The descendants of conquerors have become guardians. Elder Voss watched the council delegates as they witnessed the truth of the silence. He saw their fear slowly transforming into wonder, their suspicion giving way to curiosity. He remembered feeling the same things 3 centuries ago when he first understood what the humans had built. I know it is difficult to believe, he said softly. I struggled with it for many years. How could the humans forgive us? How could they spend thousands of years helping us change instead of simply destroying us as we deserved? He looked at Alina with deep respect. But that is who they are. They do not see enemies. They see possibilities. They do not seek vengeance. They seek growth. They understood something that my ancestors never could, that the universe is not a competition to be won. It is a garden to be cultivated. The delegation reached New Harmony on the 4th day. The station was vast beyond imagination. Constructed world hanging in space, home to billions of beings living in peace. Ships of every design moved through its docking rings. Signals in hundreds of languages filled the communication channels, and everywhere species that had once tried to conquer or destroy humanity worked alongside humans as equals. High Chancellor Murray was given a tour of the station by Alina and a group of human officials. She saw hospitals where former warriors healed the sick. She saw schools where the children of different species learned together. She saw factories where engineers from a dozen civilizations built ships that protected the peace. In a quiet garden at the heart of the station, she finally asked the question that had haunted her since the humans first appeared. Why? She said, you had every reason to hate us, every reason to fear us. You knew that the galaxy had spent 12,000 years believing you were monsters. You could have proven them right. You could have conquered everything. She looked at Alina with genuine confusion. Why choose this instead? Alina considered the question for a long moment. When she answered, her voice was soft but certain. Because we made a choice long ago about who we wanted to be. She sat down on a bench overlooking a small pond where fish from a dozen worlds swam together. When the progenitors came to Earth, we were young and weak and afraid. We could have responded to their cruelty with cruelty. Of our own, we could have learned their ways and become conquerors ourselves. She shook her head slowly, but we saw. Where that path led, we saw the progenitors with all their power and technology, and we saw that they were miserable. Their empire was built on fear. Their subjects hated them. Their children inherited nothing but war. Alina looked up at Miraset. We decided. We wanted something different. We wanted to build a civilization based on hope instead of fear, on mercy instead of revenge, on growth instead of conquest. And when we defeated the progenitors, we had a choice: destroy them and become what they were, or help them become what we wanted to be. She smiled. We chose the harder path, and it took thousands of years, but look at what we built. She gestured toward the station around them. The billions of lives, the peaceful cooperation, the former enemies now working together. This is what mercy creates. This is what patience achieves. This is what becomes possible when you choose to believe that every being, no matter how cruel or aggressive or broken, has the capacity for change. Meyer stood silent for a long time, looking out at the garden, at the station, at the galaxy that was about to transform forever. The council voted to accept your partnership, she said finally, but I think we did not truly understand what we were agreeing to. No, Elelina agreed. Most beings do not understand until they see it for themselves. We thought you were offering protection from the Balfury military alliance, defense against external threats. We are offering those things, but that is not the real offer. Is it? Marit looked at Alina with new understanding. You are offering us a chance to change, to become something better than we are, to learn what you learned 12,000 years ago. Alina nodded. That is exactly what we are offering. Meyer was quiet for another long moment. Then slowly she extended her hand toward Alina in the gesture of friendship that humans had taught the galaxy. Then I accept, she said, on behalf of my people and my council. I accept not just your protection but your teaching. Show us how to build what you have built. Show us how to become what you have become. Alelina took her hand and shook it firmly. It will not be easy, she warned. It will take generations. There will be setbacks and failures and moments when you want to give up, I know, but we will be with you every step of the way for as long as it takes. 3 months later, the human fleet finally emerged from the silence. 400,000 vessels moved into council space, but they came as protectors, not conquerors. They took up positions around vulnerable worlds. They established defensive lines against the distant Valori threat. They began the long work of building a galaxy that could face the future together. In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council, a new plaque was added to the wall of historic moments. It showed the image of Alina Vasquez and Elder Voss standing together, human and progenitor, former enemies united in peace. The inscription below the image was simple: they came not to rule us, but to remind us what we could become. And in the hearts of billions of beings across 1,000 worlds, fear slowly faded. It was replaced by something that had been missing from the galaxy for far too long: hope. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of threats. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the peoples of the galaxy did not face those threats alone. Humanity had returned, and they had brought with them the most powerful weapon in existence, not ships or soldiers or technology, but the simple revolutionary idea that every enemy could become a friend, that every monster could be redeemed, that mercy was stronger than hatred and hope was stronger than fear. The galaxy would never be the same.